We're officially 1 month away from Fabled, and with that, the rotation of the core constructed format. And today, I really want to break down kind of the reasons why a certain card may or may not be reprinted in a way. I talked about in the last video a lot of cards I do not want to see reprinted. Today are the type of cards that I would like to see reprinted, mostly because of the health and like the way that you actually adapt into a rotational format. A lot of times it's not about, the best cards in the format. It's not about the premier cards, the kind of those cards that like you build around, right? It's about the support of the format. And a lot of times that comes in the form of, occasional draw cards or maybe, the removal that makes sense to the format. I believe in Disney Lorcana, sets 1 through 8. We've had some of the most prolific removal in any card game that I've ever played because of the song mechanic. And I think it's a big one to kind of like really understand is that in other games, songs they don't exist. The idea of like removing a character by like exerting one and like playing it for free in a resource system game that like you actually accrue resources and play them. It's a very very like ridiculous, powerful kind of resource to be used in a game of Disney Lorcana, and that compares to a lot of games in general that use a resource system. So that's why I think the removing so many kind of makes a lot of sense, gives the designers this new capability of like design and things that they can play with, which I think is very, very interesting. So today I really want to touch on like, hey, this is why I would probably include a certain or specific type of card in the rotational format. Let's get into it. So here we are starting off with Stitch, Carefree Surfer, and look at this family. Now, in the last video, I ended on Rapunzel should not be reprinted. And I think because of the, power of how good Rapunzel is, where we compared to these two cards, which are both 7 cost inkables, and do kind of the similar thing. One is a character, one is a song. So Stitch here, of course, is a 7 cost inkable, 4 strength, 8 willpower, 2 lore, with the ability Ohana. When you play this character, if you have 2 or more other characters in play, you may draw 2 cards. So this really just double downs on this character-esque format, which is pretty much what I assume is going to be, going on a lot of the times. With a lack of removal in the format, you're just going to have more boards that are wider. So Stitch becomes the perfect option for Amber decks to draw more additional cards. Whereas Look at This Family is kind of hitting on 2 different goals I think is really nice for the format. The 7 cost inkable Amber action song with Sing Together 7. Look at the top 5 cards of your deck. You may reveal up to 2 character cards and put them into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your deck in any order. So the first thing I think this does is really hit on Sing Together. With the removal of set 4, we lose basically all of the really strong and powerful set 4 cards that had Sing Together. Now, if we're being honest, this was something that didn't really ever hit. We didn't have this format where like, oh my God, Sing Together is the greatest thing since sliced bread. Under the Sea certainly had its moments. Obviously, A Pirate's Life definitely has its moments, but we see A Pirate's Life be sung by one character way more often than it ever is sung together. And I think that's because 6 is actually just a much more achievable, number to hit in the game for the majority of decks that would play that card. But Look at This Family is a card that we've seen up and down. We've seen it actually more recently in like the Amber Steel decks that are not playing Dock and not playing a whole new world. And they're playing Look at This Family and Beyond the Horizon. I think that type of deck is really interesting because it really does utilize the Sing Together mechanic in a way that I think it was appropriate. So I think a card like Look at This Family, again, it adds a little bit more draw for Amber. It makes up for the lack of Rapunzel and things like that, which I know people are really upset about, but it's just, hopefully that this is enough of a way to say like, all right, we don't have the best draw card in the game anymore. And if she doesn't get reprinted, at least we have some choices to go with. And I do think that both these cards represent that in a really, really fair way. Let's talk about locations for a moment. I think removing the majority of locations is a noticeable thing for the format, and the idea that we haven't received a location in sets 7 or 8. So now you're just talking about removing sets 3 and 4, and there's 0 in sets 7 and 8. So you're kind of relying on sets 5 and 6 and whatever the reprints of set 9 are for location options in the game. And there are some good ones, but there's no Forbidden Mountain. No, but seriously, guys, for me, I would just love to see the Forbidden Mountain remain in the game. It has come up from time to time in different decks within the metagame, people finding a way to utilize it. I would just, hey, as for me, this one's a little bit for me. I won't lie. I'd love to see it be reprinted. Another card I'd love to see be reprinted because it's a card that really didn't have a lot of life in him in itself is Arthur Wizard's Apprentice, the 3-cost uninkable, 1 strength, 3 willpower with the ability Student. Whenever this character quests, you may return chosen character of yours to your hand to gain 2 lore. And of course, this has 1 lore himself. So this card effectively quests for 3 on a 3-cost uninkable 1/3. The problem with it is that it came out in a set with Madam Mim and all of the fun bounce effects that she brought with her. So this card did have a little bit of fun in the first few weeks of the Rise of the Floodborn metagame, but it really just fell off. There was so much removal for it. The 1 strength wasn't enough to kind of like push the card forward to have a real chance to have longevity. It really did combo well with cards like LeFou, which is a way to ready it and things like that. But I think in a format where it's a little bit slower, there's a lot less rush running around, there's a chance that Arthur's Wizard Apprentice could be an archetype in itself and really just be like that way for a different, aggro decks in general, or maybe even like a more tempo-based deck, like looking to get the most out of a card like Genie and things like that. I just feel like Arthur has a chance to, really be better in a format with less rush and less removal. And it'd be nice to see the Wizard's Apprentice kind of have another time or another moment to shine. So when we start talking about that lack of removal and really the hard removal, I think Emerald is, not necessarily looking for any more. It does have a couple nice answers to it already. The stopped in chaos in its tracks is effectively removal. You're welcome is obviously a pretty good removal. Heffalumps and Woozles is not removal, but it's still like a nice little song to be sung. So it's not that the format necessarily needs more Emerald removal, but I think that when you start talking about the cards that make sense, the less power cards, a little bit more support, Mother's Knows Best and Kit Cloudkicker come to mind for me. I also think these are ways to defend off the potential aggro strategies. I think Kit Cloudkicker works in both ways. It gives the Emerald aggro decks that tempo play on turn 3 to kind of remove a card that could potentially be threatening the aggro strategy, but it also gives Emerald mid-range control decks a character that can keep them up to speed and tempo-wise against the really fast-paced aggro decks. So I think a card like Kit Cloudkicker actually makes a ton of sense because it is a character with this ability, and it's still restricted. It can't just simply bounce anything. And then Mother's Knows Best, as another nice song. We really don't have that many songs in the format at all. So a card like Mother's Knows Best, just being that, that way to really keep speed with some of the aggro decks would just be a really nice addition, in my humble opinion, that would make a lot of sense. And it's not this over dramatically powerful card. And with, a character like Ursula Deceiver of All hopefully not being reprinted, you don't have a way to double sing this or anything like that. So it's just a one-time use, one-time effect. And I do think that that's the type of card that really makes sense in the format. Shout out to our sponsors, Codex Journals. That's right, there is now an official affiliate link, which is codexjournals.com/the Forbidden Mountain. And make sure you use the code at checkout for 10% off. Codex offer 5359. That's right, guys. We got the Codex Journal. This journal is honestly so awesome. I was able to finally, really utilize it for set champs. You have the lore here, and then we have this nice, wonderful notepad here. In all honesty, the idea that you have this at your, as soon as you end the game, you take it from the lore book, you flip it right over, and boom, you can start doodling notes here. What was the matchup? What did you knew about the matchup? Is it something you favored? You can utilize this at set championships, even at testing, just like a testing table. I think that's really where this is useful because you can plan out your matchups that you're going to play against and then really just go through it. But it really it asks you the questions that you're not necessarily asking yourself when you really think about a matchup. So when it asks you, it triggers that thought in your process, hey, okay, what is the actual truth about this? What is my matchup favorability? What cards were best? What cards were worse? What was the thing that my opponent did that I just didn't have an answer for? That's everything that's covered in the Codex Journals. Absolutely worth purchasing. Going to put them in the link for the description and, of course, in the pinned comments below. But shout out to Codex Journals. They're honestly very awesome, and everyone that I know that has already purchased this has nothing but good things to say about it. So definitely check them out. More ways to draw cards again. So here we are with some Sapphire draw. I think Maurice's workshop, the uninkable item with the ability looking for this. Whenever you play another item, you may pay 1 to draw a card, is honestly a card that when you look at the format and you say, man, there's no Popsicle, there's no Fortisphere, there's no Hidden Inkcaster, like there's none of these cards that would allow for this card to be a double draw, but it would still enable the potential item strategy for Ruby Sapphire or for like Sapphire Emerald as an aspect that we've seen a little bit of at the World Championships. This is the type of card that you really need in order for items to even kind of stand through rotation. And I think without it, we're probably going to be really at a loss for that item type strategy, which is a pretty fun strategy. It's very different to the mechanics of Disney Lorcana. It's not based on any of its like foundations. I think that it's kind of it fell into our laps over the course of 8 sets, maybe over the course of 7 sets. But the realism is without Maurice's Workshop, without Hiram Flavorsham, like these little subtle cards like the wardrobe and things like that, it's really not enough, in my opinion, to make items like a tier 2 deck even. So Maurice's Workshop, to me, feels like the core piece that would need to come back in order to keep that alive. The other mechanic here, again, is double downing on Sing Together. The Sing Together mechanic here for Dig a Little Deeper, the 8-cost uninkable action song. Look at the top 7 cards of your deck, put 2 into your hand, and put the rest on the bottom of your deck in any order. So again, we're really looking for core pieces that were the support systems of a deck. Obviously, Maurice's Workshop was the foundation of draw once, like the moment Hiram is removed from the format and banned in, the current core constructed. But coming back now, and you look at it, you're like, man, what are the real items that we can synergize with? There's some cool ones out there, specifically the Ruby Sapphire, their entire Duel Link, a lot of that is based around items and things like that. So without a card in the same aspirations as Maurice's Workshop, it's going to be very difficult for item enjoyers to really find a home, in my opinion, which is why I feel it could be reprinted just because we don't have all those real power, cheap items that replace themselves that made the card feel broken. I also look at a card like Tamatoa Happy as a Clam, and it's looking for friends and things to really want to get back, and I just don't see it right now. So that's why I think Workshop feels like an actual good fit to come back for the game. Another card, obviously, Dig a Little Deeper. Again, Sing Together. I want Sing Together to still exist. I want it to feel mechanically sound. And I think in a lower power format, less removal, more characters in play, the ability to, actually conjoin them, to turn them sideways, to sing the song together, to kind of get that whole mechanic go through. I think the rotation format has a chance to really deliver that. So a card like Dig a Little Deeper, an 8-cost uninkable is very hard. It's very priceless to put that card in your deck. But if you have this ability to say, like, okay, like I can get there, hopefully there's some shift mechanics. We're going to talk about some of the shift cards I'd love to see back too soon. But this is just a mechanic that I think never really got a ton of justice. But in this format, it feels like this powered down removal format. It feels like Staying Together really has an opportunity to stand through. And a card like Dig a Little Deeper offers a nice little draw condition to the format in its own little unique way. So I don't know. Time will tell. Let me know in the comments what you feel about Sing Together. I know this is something that I was really adamant about in the Ursula's Return block when it first came out because I really wanted to be impactful. And I feel like, yes, there were cards that were played, but there just wasn't enough of them that it felt like, yeah, this mechanic really, really stuck out. Let me know how you feel about it in the comments below. Now, some removal that I think really needs to be implemented as well are cards like Brawl and Scar Vicious Cheater. Brawl, of course, is a 3-cost inkable Ruby action, banish chosen character with 2 strength or less. Scar, the 7-cost uninkable 6 strength, 5 willpower, 2 lore with Rush, and Daddy Isn't Here to Save You. During your turn, whenever this character banishes another character in a challenge, you may ready this character. He can't quest for the rest of the turn. So Scar is basically a board wipe in himself at the cost of 5 willpower. So you can come in and clear a lot of aggro decks in a nice, efficient way and not feel like you're totally out of the game. And you can do it all by challenging. I think this card really does fit the mold of what rotation is kind of shaping up to look like. Again, not a lot of removal in the format. Really seems like characters and stats are really going to matter. So when you think about all those things, you're like, how? What are the perfect cards? We don't have these board white removal type cards. I think Sisu is like not a good and healthy card, as I said before in the last video. So Scar feels like the perfect card to reprint as a way to really just kind of be active and challenge the board and make characters feel a little bit more important. Brawl, on the other hand, is very similar to a lot of the other removal that it's currently in the format. We look at Wrong Lever as an option here, just an ability to get rid of a card when necessary. And I think the restriction of 2 strength or less makes a lot of sense. It still answers a ton of cards. It's not the cleanest thing. It's not a song that we can sing that strictly removes something and then move the game forward. So there is a cost to paying 3 for an action. But Brawl does feel like the type of card that its ability is perfect for what is necessary to kind of like not let aggro just run wild on the format. So I do hope that Brawl does find a way into the reprint sheet for Fabled. Of course, we move on to Steel, and some of these feel like the perfect, there was a little bit of a spoiler leak out there that may or may not have confirmed the reprint of Strength of a Raging Fire before I had the opportunity to record this, so it might look like I'm a genius, but the truth is that I just think that Strength of a Raging Fire, the 3-cost action song for Steel that deals damage to chosen character equal to the number of characters in play, it makes a lot of sense for the format. It really does make this format look a little bit more character on character-ish. This is also what I think one of the most skillful cards in Disney Lorcana. When am I supposed to not quest with a character to make sure I have another character in play for my strength the next turn and things like that. I think that that's what strength really represents well. I also think it's just the most fair song of the current Steel Song package. Along Came Zeus kind of trades up. Let Storm Rage on trades all over the place and replaces itself. A Whole New World, obviously broken, can't be reprinted, and it has already been stated on Lorecast that it wasn't going to be reprinted. Strength of the Raging Fire is that one Steel song that I think deserves the nod, and it really does kind of like make everything okay. Fire the Cannons is a card that even in set 1, it didn't like really shine or anything like that. It's never been like this, oh my god, crazy card. But what it does is it just represents the simplicity of Disney Lorcana, and I think it's important to really hold that. And if this is a card that works both ways, similar to my Cloud Kicker, where aggro decks can defend their characters by a cheap removal that finishes off another character or even maybe gets rid of a problematic character, it's okay. But it also gives like the mid-range and control decks a card that kind of like keep themselves even against certain versions of the metagame. Like as example, Lady Family Dog is a 3-cost, which you don't answer very easily on turn 3 on average. But if you can say, hey, I can use my 2 resources to do one thing, and then my 1 resource to finish off their 3-cost, you might not have answered all of the characters in play, but for 1 resource to remove a 3-cost character, obviously it puts something into play for free, but still, you get to remove 2 lore for 1 cost. And I think that is a healthy thing again for the format. And it's really just about simplicity of it all. Like, this is a starter deck card, right? Like, this is a card that you played in the Sapphire Steel starter deck in the first chapter starter deck events that you probably, hopefully, if you're like me and you're old enough and you played with him. It's a card that's been around literally forever, and I think that it's the perfect simplicity level for removal that you move into a powered down format of rotation. So I think that that's why these 2 cards for me, they just get the nudge. I think they make a lot of sense, and maybe I got lucky and it was already revealed that strength is out there. Time will tell. Now let's talk about a few shift lines I think would really do well in the format. Cinderella, the Knight in Training, and Cinderella Stout-Hearted. Now, if you're an OG of the channel, you know that there was a time and place where I thought Cinderella Stout-Hearted was one of the most overrated cards in Disney Lorcana, and if I'm being honest, I still think it kind of is. However, in this upcoming format, when I believe a lot of the format is going to stand still, and you're not going to have a lot of interactions because there's not going to be a lot of board wipes, Cinderella Stout-Hearted feels like the best answer to a format like that. Having the 7-cost Inkable, 5 strength, 5 willpower, 3 lore with shift 5, resist 2, and the Singing Sword. Whenever you play a song, this character may challenge ready characters this turn. I think when you look at this card and you say, okay, how do I answer certain cards in the format? This obviously is a card that might be very difficult to answer. I won't lie to you. But it comes at the price as a 7 cost character, which, in my opinion, I think that this gets glossed over a ton. If you're paying 7 ink for something, it should be good, right? Like, it shouldn't be this easily removed character. Look at Tamatoa Shiny, so shiny, right? Like, it's a 5/8. It's not easy to remove that character. It is, once it's in play, it does demand an answer, but it's very difficult because, again, it costs 8. Cinderella is the same concept. Like, it costs 7. So having a 5/5 with resist 2 is obviously bulky, but I think that that's okay. I think it's okay to have those characters. So when you look at this and you're like, hey, how do I answer these boards that are just going to stand still? There's not enough removal. I think the best way to do that and push it forward is with characters like Cinderella. I just think that the mechanic of challenging ready things is nice to have still in the game. And I really think that you get the bang for your buck because you also get knights out of the deal. Obviously, the 2-cost Knight in Training is a 2/2 with 1 lore and the ability to have courage. When you play this character, you may draw a card and choose and discard a card. I think that there's enough sifting there, but this gets you, an in-ink combination for shifting this Cinderella. Currently, the only other Cinderella, I believe, is the Glass Slipper Cinderella, which is I think she's a 4-cost uninkable. I'll put the card on screen here, and she allows you to put your Glass Slipper, like, back to the bottom of your deck. Obviously, that's not a card that anybody really wants to play unless you're just having fun with Cinderella stuff, but it's just too much work. So I think that getting Cinderella Knight in Training would make a lot of sense to have Cinderella Stout-Hearted. And of course, it adds 2 more knights, which we don't really talk about enough. But like having 7 dwarves mines in the format, getting some more knights kind of makes a lot of sense to me as well. So all in all, I do think that Cinderella Stout-Hearted is the perfect, very similar to what Scar is doing for the format. Cinderella could also be doing for the format. Now let's talk about Mulan. So Mulan, the Inquired Soldier, and Mulan, the Elite Archer, the 6-cost, inkable, 2 strength, 6 willpower, 2 lore, with shift 5, straight shooter. When you play this character, if you use shift to play her, she gets +3 strength this turn, and triple shot during your turn. Whenever this character deals damage to another character in a challenge, deal the same amount of damage up to two other chosen characters. And then Mulan, the Inquired Soldiers, the 1-cost, inkable, 2 strength, 3 willpower, 1 lore with Battle Wound. This character enters plays with 2 damage. Again, I'm really trying to find ways to interact with the board and the characters in play through other characters. So very similar to the Vicious Cheater, similar to Cinderella Stout-Hearted. I think Mulan offers that same type of concept where when we can shift her, then we can do this really insane play, like coming in and doing 5 damage to 3 different characters on a shift 5 character. It's actually incredibly fair. Not to mention when the choices for the shifting is actually super minimal right now. I think the only one that's currently in like really in play is the Steel Mulan, which obviously is now creating Ruby Steel, which I think would be great for the game in general. I think that if we really want to get a little bit off tangent for a second here, the idea that rotation could bring forth Emerald Ruby or Ruby Steel and things like that, maybe Sapphire Amber, those types of ink combinations, if they can come to life because of rotation and target it and finally using the dual links and things like that, that's all great. I think that's a huge win for Disney Lorcana. Shout out to Cody, by the way, this weekend for winning the big 8K with Emerald, Ruby, Prince John, Shenanigans, Shark, all the fun stuff. If you didn't see that deck, definitely go check out Sharp Gaming this past weekend. JDZ Quest streamed it on his channel. Just really cool. But that's the type of stuff that I think in rotation is really cool. If we have the opportunity to do it, push it, that's great. So I think Mulan really does fit that role again, very similar to what Scar could do, what Cinderella could do. It just helps you interact with the board in a fair way. And if it locks us into like Ruby Steel, that's fine by me too. I think another perfect card for rotation would be Crickee, the 5-cost inkable, 3 strength, 4 willpower, 3 lore. The Lucky Cricket's ability is spreading good fortune. When you play this character, your other characters get +3 strength this turn. Again, in the same faith, this is a way for characters to be the board wipe, for characters to interact glimmer on glimmer action, banishing all opposing characters and things like that. I think Crickee is a perfect example of this. And not to mention, Crickee really does credence to being second in Disney Lorcana. If your opponent is going to take that risk on their turn 5, quest out with all their characters, be like, okay, I'm going to be good. There's no way he answers all this. And then you get to slam a Crickee and use your board to take out their board and then take control of the game. I think those are the coolest plays in Disney Lorcana. They really create swing moments. And I think Crickee is the perfect example of a card that can do that. And on top of that, he's a 3-lore character. He does help to end games, which I think is very, very important. All in all, I think that Crickee is just, again, Scar, Crickee, Cinderella, like Mulan, like all of these cards really make sense to me as reprints, and I hope that we get at least some number of them in the rotation core constructed format. So we had to get to this moment because it's so important to talk about. The lack of board wipes in Disney Lorcana it's just kind of insane, if I'm being completely honest. These are the cards that are, really stood up for one point or another in Disney Lorcana's history. Grab Your Swords and Be Prepared are Chapter 1 cards. Grab Your Swords, of course, is the 5-cost uninkable steel song that simply reads, deal 2 damage to each opposing character. Be Prepared, the uninkable 7-cost ruby song, banish all characters. And then the 8-cost uninkable emerald Sing Together, 8, Under the Sea. Put all opposing characters with 2 strength or less to the bottom of their player's deck in any order. The fact is, there is no board wipe in the current rotation of Disney Lorcana once Fabled hits. The closest thing is Restoring the Crown, and that is not even truly a board wipe mechanic. It's just like a way to hopefully put it into place. But in my humble opinion, as much, and listen, I know, all right, I honestly do know that the amount of times you've been Be Prepared it has scarred you, pun intended. And because of that, you're like, no, I never want to see that card again. It's so awful. The truth is, Be Prepared is a necessity to the game. It's a necessity to the health of Disney Lorcana. If you get to a point where every game you play feels like a starter deck, where you're just like, put a character into play, do nothing, put a character in play, do nothing, put a character in play, do nothing, and you look at your board, I'm like, oh, all my characters are better than yours, you can never answer this, turn them all sideways. Or it turns in the other way, where you're winning the race, okay, and you have the favorables, and you're like, oh, okay, like I don't need to quest because I'm just gonna keep putting characters in play. My opponent can't answer them. There's no way for my opponent to Be Prepared me anymore. There's no way to Grab Your Swords. I don't need to be worried. I don't need to be afraid of that. Right? Well, I don't think that's a healthy game state for Disney. I think it's a terrible game state for Disney Lorcana. So therefore, I'm actually praying that Be Prepared is reprinted because I believe we need the safety valve in the game. We need that restriction to just says, hey, you can't sit and wait till you establish 20 lore of characters in play and that's it. I don't think that's healthy for the game whatsoever. I'm like pleading, please let there be a Be Prepared. Please let there be something that removes all cards in play from the field. We need it. It's even in from other games, it's very, very clear that almost every other game has a board wipe mechanic. Wrath of God in Magic the Gathering, it gets reprinted like every other day. Okay, so I think that we really need one of these cards to it's got to come through, guys. It's got to come through. And with that, understanding that honestly, any of these cards is better than having none of these cards. And of course, Grab Your Swords is a card that kind of fell off because Willpower became king. So it's not even like it's the best reprint. It's not even like it's the most healthy card right now, even to play in sets 1 through 8. So I think that it could definitely be reprinted and be fine. Again, I think Be Prepared is actually a perfectly fine and card that I would not bat an eye at all if it was reprinted. I'm kind of hopeful that it is. Under the Sea does hit again one time on the Sing Together mechanic, and I think that if we're trying to keep Sing Together in the game, it makes a lot of sense to see Under the Sea reprint it. Hey guys, this is the Tips for All Disney Lorcana Foundations guide. It is completely free on our Metafy. If you're looking to get some nice tips and nice tricks from the members of Team TFM, this free guide really does just have some nice, insightful articles and really just these fundamental mechanics of how you can get better at Disney Lorcana. And there it is, the cards and kind of the reasons why I really think that some of these need to be reprinted, and just kind of how we can get to a healthy, format in general for Disney Lorcana. All in all, I'd love to know in the comments what cards you want to see be reprinted. And by the way, special thing, if you made it all the way to the end, you get spoiled because we're going to be giving away a free Codex Journal. So what I need you to do for me, if you made it all the way here, I need you to comment to me the one card you want to see reprinted in Fabled. That way, let me know why you want to see it reprinted too. So I need the card you want reprinted and why you want it reprinted, and that'll give you a chance to win your own Codex Journal. Thank you guys so much again. Again, shout out to Codex for being a sponsor of TFM. If you're looking for it, pin comment below. Go pick one up. And of course, if you haven't yet, hit that like button for me. If you like videos like this, share with your friends. We'll catch you guys in the next one.